and the sky is falling, and we have to change everyone's mind. Well, that's evidencing to you that you're not really trusting God.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Adam's Fall. In today's episode, I'm going to ask the question whether the second coming and time speculation that Christians have had for hundreds, if not 2,000 years, is in any way comparable to the speculation about the coming imminent climate change, apocalypse, or nuclear Armageddon. And this is not new, of course. Humanity has been speculating about the end of times since probably the beginning, but it is also featured very prominently in Christianity. And among many Christians, including the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the LDS or quote Mormon Church, there has also been speculation about when the end is coming, when Jesus is coming back. And I think a lot of this is because when we look at all the evil in the world, how much destruction there is, it's very hard to countenance how this can continue. And there are also a lot of other Christian organizations devoted to this. In the dispensationalist movement, there's a lot of speculation about end of times. One particular ministry I'm familiar with, the End Times Ministry, is devoted to these kinds of topics and reading the prophecies and the signs. And so there are many people from all religious contexts, but especially in the Christian context, that can even become very obsessed with this, and it can lead to a lot of anxiety and stress and paralysis. And so I wanted to look at a little video from Luke Thompson, who is an Orthodox Christian who talks about how in previous parts of his life, when he was a young person, he was worried very much about the satanic panic, about the rapture, and about the end times. And he was often very anxious. And at this point, has come to a question about how can we be vigilant and ready without worrying about tomorrow. Now, this particular clip is actually from a reaction by Pastor Paul Vanderklay, where he talks about covering Revelations in his church. And he has not done this for many years, but because of the focus on the apocalypse or apocalyptic talk so much in the world today, he thought it might be relevant. So this is from Pastor Paul Vanderklay's channel, but I also urge you to go over to Luke Thompson's channel as well. And let's take a listen.
Doing that. You're the fruit of worry in you and anxiety, and the sky is falling, and we have to change everyone's mind. Well, that's evidencing to you that you're not really trusting God. But how do you, I guess that's maybe a good question. How do you be vigilant for the coming of Christ without worrying about the end times and wars and rumors of wars? And
of course, maybe I'll read a little bit from More Than Conquerors. So I'm going to be preaching on the book of Revelation this summer. And why Revelation? I don't know. The fact that Jordan Peterson said he's going to do a seminar on Revelation, did that influence me? Maybe a little bit. The fact that I haven't touched the book for a long time influenced me more. And the fact that we're living in such an apocalyptic time probably influenced me the most.
So there, Pastor Paul talks about how he's being influenced by the apocalyptic time. And when we have the internet, we have so much availability to news. Of course, we learn about disasters, earthquakes. We learn about wars. Of course, the war in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, and the conflict in Iran and with Israel and America's involvement in that conflict. People get worried and very stressed and even paralyzed because of worry about the end of times. Now, are these things new? I think what's missing often from this discussion is that this focus on the end of times is a perennial issue for humankind. And from the beginning of Christianity, Jesus and Paul talk about the end of times. And it's clear to me from their discussions that they had a belief that the end of times or dramatic divine intervention was close at hand. within their lifetimes or generation. And I can imagine why this might be the case in the setting of Israel, where they were occupied by Rome. And so naturally, you would expect that they would say, well, how could God, who's a good God, who loves his children, how could he let this kind of thing continue? Now, Jesus, what were his teachings on the imminence of the end times? Well, we can go to Matthew 10:23. When they persecute you in one town, flee to the next. For truly, I say to you, you will not have gone through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. And from Matthew, Mark, and Luke, truly I say unto you, there are some standing here who will not taste of death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Also in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, truly I say unto you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. And one of the most prominent discussions of this is from the parable of the 10 virgins. Now, the parable of the 10 virgins is very popular amongst LDS commentators and church leaders, and is often referenced in church meetings, especially our general conference, which is our global church meeting. So let's go through the parable of the 10 virgins. And what Jesus talks about in that is that the 10 virgins or bridesmaids are waiting for the bridegroom, who's a symbol of Christ. They all have lamps, but only 5 bring extra oil. These are called wise. The other 5, foolish, bring no extra oil. The bridegroom is delayed, and all 10 fall asleep. When he finally arrives at midnight, the foolish virgins' lamps are gone out, and they ask the wise for oil. The wise cannot share, so the foolish go to buy some, but while they're gone, the door is shut, and they are locked out of the wedding feast. So naturally, this parable can provoke fear and anxiety. Am I one of the wise virgins that has my lamp full of oil, or am I one of the foolish ones that will be locked out because I'm not prepared? So what lessons can we learn about being vigilant from this parable? Well, vigilance requires long-term preparedness. The wise virgins were not just waiting passively, they brought extra oil. True vigilance isn't just momentary alertness, but sustained readiness. The bridegroom was a long time in coming, and they all became drowsy and fell asleep. This teaches that even when the return of Christ seems delayed, believers must stay spiritually prepared. No one can prepare for you. The foolish virgins tried to borrow oil, but it was not transferable. This implies that spiritual readiness is personal. You can't rely on others' faith, righteousness, or readiness. And there comes a point when the door can be shut. When the foolish return, they cry out, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he replies, I do not know you. In other words, there's a finality to the moment when Christ returns. It is too late to prepare afterward. In Jesus' direct warning, therefore, keep watch, because you do not know the day or the hour. And this is the main point. Since no one knows the timing of Christ's return, constant vigilance is required. So it's obvious from that, and also from statements Paul made, that they both believe that the end times would be soon. And the parable of the 10 virgins can be very anxiety-provoking if you do not believe you are one of those wise virgins. So, of course, you're going to be compelled to try to do all you can to be one of the 5 wise virgins. In this feeling of apocalypse, or that the end time is near, or I've got to be ready, or I will be one of those shut out, can provoke fear and anxiety. And fear is a very strong motivator. Yet you could ask the question, despite Jesus and Paul's belief, it's now 2,000 years later, and where is the apocalypse? Where is the end times? Was it wise to be vigilant and worried? Did Jesus really mean it? All those generations of people who were vigilant and worried, what did it help them? Were they being manipulated? Did Jesus use these statements in the parable to inspire action, knowing that it was playing on people's fears and anxieties? These are all good questions. And I think there probably is something to that Jesus was using the apocalypse to inspire action. There's nothing that motivates people more than fear that can get them to do action in their lives. And so this constant state of readiness often is when we fear that something around the corner is coming that we have to be ready for. And so I think the parable highlights that we do need to be constantly vigilant. There are disasters, things that if we're not ready for, we aren't prepared, that we can suffer the consequences and it can become too late. But can we take that too far and become obsessed with it? I think so. You can go on YouTube or Twitter, and if you're following all the channels about the second coming and end times, it can be very easy to get paralyzed because of fear and worry. But Jesus also says that we shouldn't worry about tomorrow, that we should focus on the day. And he also says that he doesn't know the time or place. So there's a balance. Yes, it's probably a good thing to be vigilant for things that can happen around the corner, unexpected disasters, and to have some sort of preparedness mindset. But when we go too far, we can actually become obsessed and full of anxiety. So these are some interesting questions. Did Jesus use the fear of the apocalypse to make sure that his followers were ready and vigilant and doing as he would have them do, keeping his commandments? I think there may be an angle that could support that. And I can see how that would go too far in some people's lives if we're not careful to balance it with Jesus' other sayings. So I look forward to your comments and thoughts, and we'll see you in the next video.